Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Teresa Alexander Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. Today, my guest is Daniela Feldhausen. Now, I didn't even ask her. Is that how you pronounce your name, Daniela? So I hope I didn't butcher it. So she is the founder of Kids Up Reading Tutors, where they teach children to learn to read and spell. And like she says, go from I hate reading to I love reading. So welcome, Daniela.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And you pronounce my name perfectly.
Oh, awesome. I know we had this little chat and I totally forgot
All good, all good. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, ma'am. So let's get into our chat because, we don't have a lot of time. So kids up tutors. Why?
Why Kids Up Reading Tutors? And then decided at some point, you know what? I think my heart is somewhere else. And I went back to school, got a master's degree in special ed, did a bunch of specialized training for teaching kids with dyslexia and dysgraphia to read and spell. And it's really what I love, absolutely love it. I've been doing it on a volunteer basis, for like 25 years. And then, when I went back to school and I learned how to do it for real, I was like, oh my God, this is great. This is what I want to do.
Awesome. Nice. And what are you finding first of all, who are your clients? Because, there are lots of children out there. And where do you get your children from? Why do they come to you specifically?
Sure. I would say we get most of our kids from parent referrals. So it started out with just me tutoring, and I was getting more parents and more kids who wanted help than I could possibly help. And so I ended up hiring folks and training them in the science of reading and training them how to do this work. The vast majority, not the vast majority, that's not even true anymore. The majority of our students are in the DC area, just because that's where I raised my kids and that's where I knew the schools and a bunch of parents and psychologists who are testing kids for dyslexia and who would then refer to us, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to say more than half at this point are on the East Coast. But we've got kids all across the country at this point, and we do all of our tutoring online, all over Zoom. And so we can work with kids wherever they are. Now we're in the summer and we're working with some kids who are on vacation. And they just take us with them and they do their tutoring for 45 minutes or an hour in the morning, maybe, where they then start their day at the beach or wherever they are. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to work with kids wherever they happen to be.
Awesome. Daniela, but they can learn to read at school.
They could learn to read at school, but not all kids do learn to read at school. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One of them is just that, you need a lot of training in order to teach some of these kids to read. They say that about a third of kids will learn to read on their own. You don't really have to teach them anything. Another third or so, you teach them something, like just give them a little nudge, send them on their way, and they'll be good to go. But there's a full third of the population that needs really good instruction. And those kids don't all have dyslexia, but there's a full third of the population that needs really good instruction. And not all the teachers in this country are trained to do it. And even if they do have the training and lots of experience, there aren't enough hours in the school day. There aren't enough hours in the school week to teach these kids who are having a hard time with reading. So if you don't have a kid who's just picking it up quickly, naturally, easily, they may or may not be able to learn it through school. And you might need to get yourself some extra support on the side.
Yeah, and not to mention, the number of students that are in a classroom. Teachers don't have the capacity to give their time. And if you're saying a third, when you look at a classroom with 20 or 30 students, it's a lot of students who need that individual time.
Yeah, that is a lot of students. And if you look at it's the NAEP scores. It's called the Nation's Report Card. The number of kids who can't read, let's say the number of fourth graders who can't read at grade level is just astonishing, like absolutely astonishing.
It is. It is. And just, you know, from a behavior analyst point of view, I see a lot of children are not able to read because they're embarrassed. So the teacher asks them to read and then they start engaging in a challenging behavior. And the teacher not understanding is it's because they cannot read. And now they're going to be embarrassed and people are going to make fun of them. So we want to also be mindful of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, so what we've noticed and the feedback we get from families is that when the child, and we work with kids and teens, by the way, it's teenagers as well. But when those kids can then read comfortably and fluently and they can write, a lot of those behaviors at school go down. The whole stress level at home tends to come way down because there are no more fights in the evening about, I don't want to do my homework. I can't do my homework. You know, parents having to sit with a child and read the homework to them. So the whole stress level around homework comes down. The whole stress level around school in general comes down. And so you're absolutely right. It affects us so much more than just reading and spelling. I mean, we hear from parents, it affects their home life. It affects what's going on in school. It affects the behaviors. It affects the kids' grades in math class and in all classes. You know, because now in math, for example, maybe they were perfectly good with math to begin with, but they're having trouble reading the word problems. Or they're having trouble reading the instructions, or trouble writing the answer to the word problem. And all of that can melt away when kids become more confident and have those skills for reading and spelling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I worked in the juvenile justice system for a long time. And what we found, which was so sad, a lot of the children, I should say, we celebrated when a child came in reading above a third grade level. Most of them read below. And these were teenagers. These were, children who were up to 18 years old. And they read below third grade. And I'm thinking, so of course, what are they going to do with their time? They're not successful at school. And now here they are in the juvenile justice system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge problem. It permeates every aspect of your life if you're not able to read and write well.
Yeah. So what are some signs that parents can look for? Because obviously they're missing something, right? Or maybe they just don't know, they don't know what to look for. What can they look for? What are the signs that say, okay, I need to get this extra help for my child?
Sure. Yeah. Some of the signs include things like having trouble with rhyming. Like if you've got a young child and you're asking them, so let's say you're asking your 5, 6, 7-year-old, hey, give me some words that rhyme with bat. Mm-hmm. You hope that they can respond with, oh, mat, sat, hat, and so on and so forth. But if they either give you just, big brown eyes and like they have no idea what you're talking about, or if some kids will respond with something like ball. If they're doing that, then okay, they haven't really understood rhyming. And we'll get in. So rhyming is related to an understanding of how our reading and writing system works. And we call that phonological skills. And that's really about whether kids understand that words are made up of individual sounds. And if you string sounds together in different combinations, you get different words. And to somebody who's a good reader and a good speller, it's like, well, yeah, of course. Words are sounds and sounds are words. But if your child isn't understanding that, it's so much more difficult for them to learn all of those phonics patterns, for example, that they're going to need to know. And one sign that your child is having trouble breaking a word into smaller pieces is this rhyming. Because in order to rhyme, you have to be able to separate out that first sound in the word from the rest of the word, and then just swap out that first sound. So if you think a word is something that you need to memorize, you have to memorize this word and this word and this word and this word, and you don't realize these words can be taken apart, you're not going to be able to rhyme. Right? So that would be one example. Another example is if you ask a child to write a word, let's say you ask them to write saw, and they write was instead. And you start to have the conversation with them about, well, no, actually, that's not right. And here's how we write it instead. And you're explaining it to them. And they're looking at you like, what do you want? I knew it was 3 letters. I knew what the 3 letters were. So I put them down in a different order. Who cares? Right? They haven't understood how our system works. They haven't understood, well, actually, the order matters a lot because we're reading from left to right. And particular letters are associated with particular sounds. And if you want to spell that sound, you need to use this letter. If you want to spell that sound, well, you might have to use this letter or this other letter, or this letter combination, or this other letter combinations. But those are all things that they have to learn. And if they're not understanding that this is a system of write down the letters that go with the sounds that you're hearing, that's another major sign that there might be something going on. Other things to watch out for are a history, either a family history of trouble with reading and spelling, because there's a big hereditary component to all of this. And if the child's having trouble with other aspects of language, let's say they're having trouble articulating or pronouncing certain letters, like they can't pronounce the R or they can't pronounce the L, the kids who have those kinds of articulation issues have a much higher rate of struggling with reading and spelling than kids who don't have articulation issues. And same thing with other kinds of developmental language issues. If your child's having a hard time understanding what people are telling them or having a hard time expressing themselves, they might have expressive or receptive language issues, and kids with those kinds of issues will also have a much greater likelihood of struggling with reading and spelling. So those are just a few more. There's a more complete checklist on our website. It's actually called like the Red Flags for Dyslexia checklist or something like that. So if you go to our website, kidsupreadingtutors.com, you can find the checklist and get it there.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Because that is so vital, because a lot of parents, they're like, okay, this is the situation and I don't know what to do and the school can't help me and this is not working and that's not working. And it becomes so frustrating. So thank you for giving them that resource, so that, allowing them access to the resource so that they can, because, every parent wants what's best for their child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times I'll say to parents, you can, if you're worried about it, you can ask your child's school or their local public school to test them for learning disabilities in reading, which is another way of talking about dyslexia. And they will do that. If you've got, if you want it done sooner rather than later, you might want to put it in writing because that tends to speed the process up. But you absolutely have the right to have your child tested for dyslexia, the reading version, and dysgraphia, which is the spelling and, other writing issues. We'll put it that way. We can get into that later if you want. But you can get your child tested. And then if they are found to have some of these issues, then they qualify for an IEP, individualized education program. And they should be getting extra support at school from the special education or exceptional education team, whatever it's called at your school. And that should absolutely help. It's just that unfortunately, in most cases, they aren't able to teach the child everything the child is missing so that the child ends up being able to read and spell fluently.
Right. And I would encourage parents to get that testing done, because a lot of parents, well, if my child gets diagnosed with something, then they're going to pigeonhole them. They're going to this, they're going to that. You're going to have access to help. And if your child gets the help as soon as possible, they can get out of that system. They may get to a point where they don't need an IEP. So the sooner you start that process, the sooner you can help them get out of it. If you're concerned about, a diagnosis or a label, because I know I've worked in the school district and I know a lot of parents like, well, I don't want my child labeled. That label helps. That label gets you access to services that you will need, that you can access to help your child.
I'm going to agree and add on a little bit more. So yes, you will get services through your school, but like we were talking about before, there aren't really enough hours in the day and there aren't enough hours in the week for an special education team at school to teach children to read. I mean, when you're going through the IEP process at school, one thing you might want to ask the team is, how often do you take kids like my son or daughter or whatever, who have these troubles and get them caught up in reading and spelling and graduate them out of special ed. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often. And so if you're concerned about that, you probably want to be looking for looking to what you can be doing outside of school to support your student, because chances are they're not going to be able to learn it in school to get caught up so that they're reading and spelling fluently and well.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And thank you for adding that extra information, because that is so vital. And we said it before, there's not enough time. There are too many students there. I'm not going to judge anybody. There are many students in a classroom, and I know that's by necessity because, teacher shortages and such. However, yes, access that help. Now, I'm just going to ask, 'cause I don't know, if they do have a diagnosis or, labeled as special ed, and they qualify for these extra services, is there a way that they can get it paid for, or is it out of pocket?
You mean anything
Those
outside of
services.
school?
Yes.
Yeah, outside of school, it's out of pocket.
Mhm.
If you have a flexible spending account, you might be able to pay for the tutoring with flexible spending account funds. I think an HSA qualifies, an FSA, and there are a few others. You'd want to Google that and check on the exact requirements of your particular plan. But it is part of the tax code that if you get what's called a letter of medical necessity, then from your pediatrician or from a psychologist who tests the student. So if you have a letter of medical necessity, then you can generally use flexible spending account funds in order to pay for it, which helps. But insurance isn't going to pay for it, and I don't know of other, avenues of getting it paid for. But I'm not a tax lawyer. I'm not an accountant, so check on it yourself. But that's my understanding.
Yeah, and I think also too, when you do have that label, see if there's some grants out there to help. There's so many different grants out there. Go to findhelp.org and see if there are any grants out there that could help you with that. I interviewed Matthew Lesko, and he talks about, ways to get grants. So, and there are grants for so many things that I didn't even have any idea. So that just might be a possibility too. Don't stop, because it gets more costly later when your child is not able to read and can't get a job and is suffering with low self-esteem and, might get caught up in, illegal activity because they feel they have no other option. So it's less expensive now when you pay for tutoring than later on when the consequences, start to show themselves.
Yeah. If you can get your child, if you can intervene early and get your child help in kindergarten or first grade, that would be really ideal. It's not that they can't learn later. I mean, we teach kids later, much older kids, all the time. Absolutely, it can be done. And we do it all the time. But if you're doing it in first grade, there's that much less that they have to get caught up on because they're not that far behind yet. So if you can do this in kindergarten or first grade, that's really ideal. It can absolutely be done later. We work with kids all the way through high school. We even have the occasional college kid that we work with. So it can definitely be done later. But if you can do this in kindergarten or first grade, that's going to be quicker, cheaper, easier for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. So look for those signs, please, early. Are they rhyming? Right? That's the first thing I thought of. And then I thought of my kids who learned to read reading Hop on Pop.
Yeah. I mean, those Dr. Seuss books, when you're reading to your student, the young kids, those rhyming books are really, really great. Like studies have shown that they actually really help children understand and gain these phonological skills. So Hop on Pop, the other Dr. Seuss books, Mother Goose nursery rhymes, those are wonderful. Any kind of games you can play, like maybe you're in a car and you can play a game of, tell me all the things you can think of that start with a B, with a B sound, and then have them tell you everything. All the words you can think of that start with or ul or s or t or whatever. That's great because you're teaching them that a word has a first sound and that can be separated out. And I can think of other words that have that same beginning sound. And once they can do that well, then you see if they can find words that end with a particular sound. Like think of all the words you can think of, or come up with all the words you can think of that end with a t sound or something like that. Or if you've got magnets on your refrigerator, have them write words with magnets and sort of walk them through the process of, okay, the word mat. What are the sounds in mat? Mat, like stretch it out, right? Maybe even show them that their mouth, that your mouth is moving and you're making these different shapes. You're doing different things with your lip and your tongue and so on as you're making those different sounds. Help them understand that they're actually producing all of those sounds. They're not really just producing the word mat. They're producing mat, and help them separate it out like that, and then use those refrigerator magnets. M is an M, and we put that on the fridge. A is an A, we put that on the fridge, and then the T. And then the next step, once they can do that, is, okay, now let's take mat. What do we need to do to turn that into sat? And then help them through the process of, well, let's see, math was mat, and sat is sat. What's different between those? And so what do we need to change? And again, start with the beginning of the word, because that's developmentally what kids learn to separate out first. So start with the beginning of the word. Once they can do that consistently, then have them swap out that last sound in the word. And once that's nice and easy, then have them swap out the middle sound in the word. How our reading and spelling system work.
Wow, those are super powerful tips. Thank you so much for going into that, Miss Daniela, because there's a parent who is like, okay, thank you, because I had no idea. And then it sounds like you can have, be playful with it, because the more fun you have with it, the more fun your child's going to have. And they're going to go right into I love reading instead of, the other.
Yep. That's what we want. I want all kids to love reading and writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember when I was teaching my children to read. So we started off with Hop and Pop and a few other Dr. Seuss books. And it was really interesting because one day, so my older son would read when we were driving, he would read the street signs and all of that. So that was their homework when we were driving. And my younger son had a list of words. And I'd just shout back there, hey, Lee, spell it. Hey, Lee, spell play. Hey, Lee, spell. And he had the list with him. And he was like, so I asked him, I said, spell it. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I said, what's IT? He's like, ID? I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? So interestingly, though, I think it was the pressure that I was putting on my baby, honestly, because he went into grade 1 and came home with a Star Trek book, chapter, that like grade 4 level book.
Okay.
And I was like, what are you doing with that? You can't read this. He's like, yes, I can. I said, no, you can't. Well, read it to me. And the little boy read that book to me.
Yay, I love it. I love it. That's great.
And I wanted to know, like, what was going on? But I think it was me. I was so nervous because Dre went into grade 1 reading, and I wanted to make sure that Lee went into grade 1 reading. And I think I put so much pressure on him that when I just threw those things at him, like that performance anxiety, right? The words wouldn't come, nothing would happen. And when his wonderful teacher, Miss Linder, would just allow him to do whatever and just be. And, he just came home, first day of school, came home reading. And I think he was just so relaxed and, mom's not stressing me out.
Nice.
So,
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And it sounds like you had a very good first grade teacher. It's fabulous.
Oh my gosh. We're still in touch with her. She is so awesome. Yep. Cindy Linder is the best.
That's wonderful.
Yes. And I think she's still teaching. So
Good.
Yeah. I'm going to say hi to Miss Brown too, because she was awesome. She was Dre's teacher. So I can't say one without the other. Just Oh my gosh. But yeah, reading, and it's so much fun. I mean, my children just love reading. They learn to read and they just go into other words. I mean, my Dre, this was back before we had computers,
Oh, okay.
and Dre would read encyclopedias and he
Oh,
would tell me all the things. So it was just like, I would not sit and read. I love reading, but I can't say that I would read an encyclopedia. And here he was. So, it's
love
just pretty
it.
awesome. Yeah, it's exciting, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us again, how can people get hold of you, Miss Daniela?
Sure. Yeah. The best way is to find us on our website, which is Kids Up Reading Tutors. And we're also on Facebook and Insta. I've got a LinkedIn presence as well. My name's a little tricky to spell, so I generally tell people to go to Kids Up Reading Tutors as opposed to trying to spell my name, which is, too complicated.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for a great chat and so informative. Audience, I hope you get so much out of this. If you listen, you will. So thank you so much for listening and watching.
Perfect. It's been wonderful being on the show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for spending your time and sharing with us your gift.